Good morning. If it is a good morning, which I doubt, sounding like Eeyore there, but there's a good reason for me to be sounding a little bit peed off at a minute, and it's to do with Nintendo. Earlier in the week, I watched a video by a YouTuber called John Hancock, and if you haven't checked out his channel, do so, especially if you're into retro stuff. This guy has a massive collection of retro games, and he's an interesting guy, to be honest. And he made a video talking about a port that has been done of Super Mario Brothers, the NES game. And it's been ported over to the Commodore 64. And this was done by a developer, a hobbyist, a fan called ZeroPaige. And he spent 7 years working on this port, presumably all on his own. And he's produced this port, and watching John Hancock's video, he's done a very good job of it. And it's something to be praised. The guy has completely ported over this game and made a very, very good version of the game that runs on the Commodore 64. Now, my first thought when I saw this was Nintendo aren't going to be happy about this. But, you know, I crossed my fingers and I hoped that it would be fine. I thought, you know, it's an old game. Nintendo aren't making any money from it anymore. And let's be honest, this is a port to a system that no longer exists. Okay, we've got the Commodore 64 Mini, but it's a niche area. Only a very small number of people are going to fit into that crossover of enthusiasts of the Commodore 64 and, you know, retro Nintendo consoles. And so there's only going to be a small number of people who are even going to be interested in this. And even if it was a bigger number, as long as it's not hurting Nintendo, what's the problem? Nintendo aren't going to be losing money, so, you know, it should be okay. I actually think that Nintendo should be looking at stuff like this and, you know, issuing statements and saying, look, you know, we don't condone people stealing our intellectual property, but we have to give praise to this. I don't know, you know, they could have gone about it and used it as a way of showing themselves to be the good guy. And maybe they could have even spoken to ZeroPaige and said to him, look, you know, here are some ground rules. This is what you need to do to stop us coming down on you. Maybe they should have taken a more softly approach. But they didn't. No, not at all. They went after ZeroPaige like... wow, like hunters searching down their prey. They have forced every site that they can find that was hosting this to take it down. Even to the point where when I looked up ZeroPaige on Twitter, his Twitter page has been taken down as well for apparently violating their terms of service. So it looks like Nintendo have gone after the guy in a big way. And I don't know what you guys think, but this doesn't sit well with me at all. As I say, I don't think this is hurting Nintendo. And in fact, I actually think what's going to hurt Nintendo here is Nintendo's own approach. And, you know, people say this is Nintendo Japan, it's not Nintendo of America or Nintendo Europe. I have no idea. I don't know where this is coming from. I suspect it's probably coming from Nintendo of Japan. But I honestly, I don't care what side of the company it's coming from. This strikes me as being utterly, utterly ridiculous and counterproductive too. Because Nintendo have been doing great things lately. You know, some of the stuff they've done, some of the games they've released, the way the Switch has been selling in bucket loads, contrary to what I thought it might do. And I'm pleased that Nintendo are doing that. I'm pleased that Nintendo are out there and they're, you know, carving their own niche in the market and they're keeping their fans happy. But this surely can't make fans happy. It seems petty and vindictive. And I honestly, I don't understand what they're thinking. I know that they're fiercely protective of their IPs. But as I said just a minute ago, surely they could have contacted the guy and come to some kind of arrangement. It doesn't have to be that they open the floodgates for people to be making copies of their new games or whatever. It's another sign of the way Nintendo treat their best fans, because let's be honest, somebody who spends 7 years porting an old game across to another old system is an enthusiast. He didn't release this to make money. This was put out for free. It was just a fan project. And so, yet again, Nintendo have gone after their best fans. And it seems utterly ridiculous. It seems so, well, as I said before, counterproductive to their standing and the way people view them. It's such a sort of corporate thing to do. And it's not the first time in recent months that they've done this. There's another YouTuber out there called Modern Vintage Gamer, and he got hit with a strike on his channel because he was uploading videos about homebrew on the Switch. Now, he's been very clear that he's not interested in, using pirated games on the Switch. That's not what this is about. This is about being an enthusiast. Again, being an enthusiast and getting into the system and seeing what you can do with it. And, I don't generally condone piracy. I'm not somebody who thinks that you should be going out and any game that is currently on the market you should be pirating. I don't think that's right. I think you should be supporting the developers as long as the developers aren't taking the piss, and we all know that some of them are, and especially publishers sometimes take the piss. But as long as these games are coming out and they're good games and they're value for money, as far as I'm concerned, from a moral perspective, we shouldn't be pirating these games. But when you're talking about old games that have been out there for some time, and we all know Nintendo's record when it comes to their old games, their back catalogue, they have got a terrible record when it comes to making their back catalogue available to gamers. And so sometimes the only way you can get these games is to download them, from a ROM site or something like that. We all would love to have a scenario where all of Nintendo's back catalogue was available and we could buy it for a reasonable fee. But short of that, we have to, resort to other methods. And so when somebody like Modern Vintage Gamer makes his videos about Nintendo products, and even, like I say, up to the Switch, managing to use the Switch as, in effect, a retro console, using homebrew and being able to use it to play emulators on, I really don't see why Nintendo would go after people like this. Modern Vintage Gamer and this guy, ZeroPaige, who made this Super Mario port. And with Modern Vintage Gamer, they went after him using the copyright process. They issued a copyright strike against him. And that would seem to, one, fly in the face of what they've said recently about the way they would approach these things. And also, it seems to me that they're abusing the copyright system on YouTube. And this is not the first time that Nintendo have done this. So it seems that they will use any method, whether it's fair or foul, to go after people they deem are breaking their rules, whatever those rules might be. I just find this utterly dumbfounding, that Nintendo would be prepared to play fast and loose with the rules on YouTube, with copyright law, and then go after people who are, as I said before, their best fans. Do they really want to alienate people this badly? It's one thing going after Modern Vintage Gamer for his videos on the Switch, but going after a guy who spent 7 years making this and is obviously an enthusiast, is obviously a fan. This is a labour of love. If I was this guy and this happened to me, I think I'd be sitting there with my head in my hands and I'd be in tears. All that work down the drain. For what? For what? What exactly are Nintendo gaining by this? I don't think they are. They're gaining nothing. They're getting some really bad PR out of it. Every time I think Nintendo have turned a corner and have started to move into the 21st century, we get this. And it's not the first time I've made these kind of videos about Nintendo, and I very much doubt it'll be the last. But, again, as ever, maybe I am. Maybe I'm missing something. And I know technically Nintendo have got the right to stop this happening. But, do you remember back in the day when Valve hired those students who made the game that went on to be Portal? Do you remember when certain devs, and we've always had devs and publishers who've gone after people for making things. I seem to remember LucasArts went after some people for keeping some of their games alive and making add-ons for their games. So it's not anything new. But we've also had publishers and developers who've embraced the community. And let's be honest, if you go back into the history of video games, it's the community that has created a lot of the games in the early days. A lot of the people like this guy ZeroPaige, back in the day, they were the guys who created this industry because the industry came from small beginnings. And some of those guys went on to be big guys in the industry. And so where are we going to get the new innovators from? Where are we going to get the new and interesting games from if the industry is strangling it? If the industry is strangling innovation, and you all know my view on companies like EA and Activision and the way they're strangling the industry from the top end. But if you start looking at the small guys who are doing these things and the enthusiasts, it seems to me that these people like ZeroPaige and to a lesser extent Modern Vintage Gamer, and I would suggest you go and look at his channel because it's really interesting, some of the stuff he does, if you're interested in retro stuff. But these guys are the guys keeping the industry going. They're the guys who are more interested in the legacy of video games, the history of video games. If we want to take video games seriously, and I know I'm getting off topic a little bit here, but if we want to take video games seriously, we have to take the history of video games seriously. We have to be able to study, we have to be able to look at old games, and we have to be able to look at, how games might work on different systems from a technical standpoint, all these kind of things. This is important to scholars, it's important to students, and it's important to people like me who are enthusiasts who like the history of video games. Retro isn't just old guys who don't like modern games. Most of the people out there I know who are like me like modern games, but we also like the old stuff, and we're interested in the old stuff, and we're interested in the history of it. And when Nintendo do things like this, they show that they have a complete disregard for the community. And through that, they have a certain amount of disregard for their own history and their own legacy. If they really cared about their legacy, they would make these games available. They would make their entire back catalogue available and put it out there so that we can play these games. But they don't. They drip, 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 and they've done this for years. And so for them to go after ZeroPaige is unacceptable and it's unforgivable. Come on, Nintendo, pull your head out your arse. Look, I know some of you guys will disagree with me on this, and if you do, come and explain why you think I'm wrong, and we can have a chat about it as usual. In the meantime, I'm going to do my usual and get a cup of tea. Wasn't going to make a video, as I said, today, but I had to get this one off my chest because Nintendo have just pissed me off. Right, okay, I'll speak to you in the next one. Bye.